Um, Changing topics a little bit. I guess, well, I mean, still staying within the topic, but there was a story my grandpa told me once, which was back in the day, like in the, I don't know, in the 50s or something in Poland. Very backwards at the time, wasn't like 1950s in North America. And he would live in that little small town, and basically he said that, they used to, like, as young guys used to just kind of, just pray different pranks, do all kinds of crazy stuff. And he said,
right.
He what's it called? Was it he got they got drunk once. They were like out hanging out, I think, at his buddy's farm, like his buddy's parents' farm, at the barn, sneaking in liquor and this and that, and then they all got this idea like, oh, let's go hit the town. And it was like middle of the week, nothing was happening, but like there's these couple girls that lived there in the center of town. Oh, let's go there, let's go. And they lived in the outskirts of town, like where all the farms were. Let's go, let's throw some rocks or whatever, wake up these girls, and thing, right? Let's just, be guys, pick on some girls. And then he said that, but one buddy got so drunk he literally couldn't get up. The other guys also like started vomiting or something. He's like, oh, I don't know. Finally, basically, my grandpa said it was just up to him, and he's like, oh, fuck, I'm going to go and ask this girl out, whatever that they were all like fantasizing about. So he gets out of the bar and starts walking down the street towards the town, and it's getting dark already. It's kind of dusk, and then he sees this guy that they would always see, kind of a neighbor 3 houses down, and he's just sitting on the side of the road, and he goes like, oh, what are you doing here? Right? It's like, why are you just sitting by yourself? And he goes, my grandpa's name was Władek. He goes, Władek. You kids, you think you don't know what you still have, left in front, ahead of you, just wasting your life away. He goes, yeah, okay, whatever. He goes, what are you doing up here? Just why don't you go home? He goes, no, I can't go back home, but you should go home. He goes, what? Why? Yeah, you should go. You shouldn't be heading to town now. It's getting dark and it's very not safe. And he's like, what? No, I want to go. He goes, no, I'm telling you, you really don't want to go. You should be heading back home. And my grandpa said that he just kind of had this weird feeling. He's like, oh, okay. And he kept on walking a little bit still, but he kept on thinking what the guy told him. And then finally he stops. He's like, shit, okay, maybe. I don't know. It just feels weird. And then he started looking around. It's like getting dark. It's, he's by himself. And then he's like, fuck it. Maybe I'll just, head back home, whatever. I'll go holler at those girls some other time. And he turns around, the guy's gone, and he's like, okay. And he just heads over right back up the street, to his house. Gets there in the morning, he wakes up and he tells his parents, he goes, wow, I saw this, our neighbor, right? But he's like, lives all these few farms down the road. But he's just sitting there. He kind of seemed kind of odd by himself and this and that and these things. And then they're like, what do you mean? Who was it, right? And he said, Kazimierz. He goes, no, didn't you hear? He goes, what? Yeah, there was a flood yesterday, and his house got flooded and a few others, and he drowned. And he's like, what? He goes, yeah, it was. We were looking for you guys. We were worried. Where the hell were you? And my grandpa, was getting drunk, and he's like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, he drowned yesterday. He died. And my grandpa said it was just like the weirdest feeling.
So what was he warning him about then? What was
that basically, if he's gonna go, he's probably gonna drown, because it was like the river overflowed in their town. This is back in the day in Poland. They didn't do dams or nothing. So when after the winter, the rivers would just flood every so on, and it just flooded the whole. Like you go down the road towards the town.
Oh, okay.
Flooded, so and yeah, this guy didn't think. Now, do I believe that story? Well, my grandpa was full of shit a lot of times, so I don't know if I believe it. He used to tell good stories sometimes. Yeah, so I mean, like he told me this other story, which.
So what do you?
So again,
he used to be full of shit. Was he just like trying to trick you and like trying to be funny, or was he trying to really pass off like this story like this?
My grandpa he was weird. He would sometimes tell these stories like he was the one who knew, the Pope, or who, Kazimierz or Karol, right? It was his name, who became John Pope II. So he knew him, and he would tell me stories about the Vatican, what he saw in there, all that stuff. But because he got invited to the Vatican actually, but so he would tell me stories like that, and then every so on he would tell me stories that then afterwards I was like, really, is that true? And then he's like, don't believe everything you hear. I'm like, yeah, but you told me the story, like when I was a kid. And then when I was older, and then he's like, "Don't believe everything you
That's
hear."
funny.
So I'm like, I don't know, but he liked to tell stories. But I remember this one. He said he was also it was like in his town. They were all hanging out with his buddies, and they started doing kind of like truth or dare kind of thing, and they were just daring each other, you know. And one guy got dared that. Because everybody thought he was like the chicken shit. He's scared of everything. So they said, he's like, no, I'm not. They're like, all right, do you want to prove it? Or the only way you can prove it? And somebody came up with this challenge. He has to go at midnight to the cemetery, and that they were digging a hole for I guess another person, whatever, that passed away, and then you had to go and into the grave. So they all went. It was close to midnight. They all it was kind of everybody's by this point a little like the atmosphere he said was a little thing. Everybody's quiet, but they're all still cracking jokes. And then they get there and they see, sure enough, there's this big hole dug. They're getting ready to bury somebody. So they're like, all right, jump in, and you got to stay there. And once the midnight clock thinks, then you can jump out and thing, right? But you got to stay there till midnight. Oh, okay. And he jumps in, and they all start, just ditched him, just like start running away from there. And this is like, I guess when they dig those holes for the coffins, it's not that easy to get out of it. Because so he was like trying to
6 feet in the ground.
Yeah. And he said that they heard him. They heard him, help me. It's like first it was just like, I can't get out, I'm slipping. And then help me. Like he just started screaming, and then it just went silent. And they all just thought it was the freakiest thing. And then, like he said, right at that time, it was like they checked their watches, and sure enough, it's midnight. So they're all like, "Fuck him!" and they ditched him. And then the guy died of a heart attack. He told me, he's like, yeah, the kid died of a heart attack. Then they found him the next day in the hall, and they found that his jacket got cut on like a root or something was sticking out, like one of the roots on the ground, and it looked like he was probably trying to get away, but it was pulling on him, and that because they heard him screaming, "He got me! They got me!" Something like that, and he probably
grabbed him.
So he thought something's grabbing him because imagine his buddies with the flashlight ran away, so he's in pitch black in this hall in the middle of fucking cemetery, and it's like midnight, and then and he was already a scared guy, and basically he died of a heart attack.
That's a shitty way to go.
That's a shitty. Yeah. I mean, he went out screaming. Just put it that way. So not necessarily that there was a ghost, but I guess he probably thought till the day, till the moment he died, that there was a ghost pulling on him, right? Wow. So yeah. That was a lot of. My grandpa told me this other story. I don't know if you want to hear it a little bit longer. What time do we have?
No, go for it.
All right, okay, I'll tell you. I'll try to do a summarized version of it. Anyways, there was a couple. That my grandpa said he heard about. He didn't know them personally, but they, young couple, they got married, and they were, trying to save up, have this whole dream of like, we're gonna have our own little house, we're gonna buy, raise kids, and all that stuff. And sure enough, she gets pregnant, and they very quickly, they were living with his parents, but she's like, well, no, it's time for us to move out. Like we can't have the kids here now, and everybody and we're living in a 2-bedroom apartment with your parents. Let's get out. So they started looking in everything in the price range they just couldn't find, right? Until finally somebody said, well, the next village over, there's like this house over there, right? It's been on the market for a while, looks like it, and you'd probably get a good price. So they go, sure enough, they see this house needs a little bit of work and stuff, but otherwise nice house, nice big property, and it's kind of, like I said, it's outside of all the cities, right? In this little, like in the countryside. Right. But still close enough where he can like drive to work, I guess, and so they ask, and then the owners are like, oh yeah, sure, you can buy it, and they're like, oh, okay, what's the price? And they're like, well, what are you looking to pay? And they tell them the price, and they're like, yep, that's good. And they're like, oh wow, okay. They're like, well, we can afford this house, so they're excited. They buy this house, and sure enough, they move in. So his pregnant wife, this guy move in, and everything's cool. And then he had this work where he was like a delegate for things like the Communist Party. He was in Poland when it was communist still. So he would travel a lot. So he goes and he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to be gone this weekend, and then I'm going to be back, right? Okay. And he goes, and then, she goes to sleep, this and that, everything's good. And suddenly in the middle of the night, she starts hearing. And she's like, okay. She's like, the hell's this sound, right? So she wakes up, and then she's like, okay, is somebody home? right? And then it starts speeding up. And she's like, okay, what the hell are these sounds? You know, so she's thinking, and you know, this thumping and this and that, and she hears it that it's downstairs. What the fuck is going on downstairs? She looks out the window.
Does it like sound like something's walking?
Yeah, like there's like something could look like hitting the wood or something, and she's, you know, you start like she's hearing all these sounds. And bang, bang, clink, clink, clink. And, you know, and she's like, what the hell? And she's like, I'm not imagining this. And she looks out the window. Her husband's not back. There's nothing. She's like, what the fuck, right? So she just spends the rest of the night, like, just holding her blanket. And she's like, what the fuck? And then, you know, next day comes. She you know, runs downstairs. And she just sees, like, there's, like, a mess in the hallway. And she's like, I don't even want to look. She just goes right for the front door, escapes. And basically runs to the closest town, right? Says, you know, I need help. What happened? I'm going by myself. I can't spend another night. My husband's not back till tomorrow. And somebody's like, what? Where are you? You know, it's like, I'm new into here. We just moved in. Oh, you're that crazy couple that bought that haunted house? And she's like, what? It's like, yeah, the house that nobody wanted to buy. She's like, what did you say? It's like, yeah, that it's haunted. She goes, yeah, it's haunted? He goes, yeah. It's like, what the fuck? What do you mean it's haunted? Yeah, there was this horrific murder and this and that. And it was like during World War II, the Germans came and they took all these people there and they just shot them up in that house. And she's like, what the fuck? No. So she's like, I'm not going back.
I thought you'd have to disclose some shit like that.
No. And so then she says she spends the night with like the people there in the town. Somebody takes her in. I see, you know, this poor girl pregnant and stuff. And then her husband comes the next day and he's like, where the hell is she? And then finally finds her into town and she's like, I'm not going back to the house. He's like, what do you mean? Yeah, the house is haunted, right? And she goes, what? You crazy? No. And he goes, don't worry, whatever. And I'm back. Let's go. We slept already. Think it was fine. Okay. So sure enough, you know, whatever. She finally gets convinced and she can't sleep the first night. She's terrified and she's just listening the whole night, listening. She doesn't hear anything. Her husband's just snoring the whole thing. And whatever. And then the next day, and another thing. And finally a week passes by, whatever, 2, 3 weeks, whatever. Everybody forgets about it, right? And then sure enough, you know, another time her husband is also, again, he keeps on traveling and stuff. And he's gone another night. And then yet again, she's by herself. And she hears, she wakes up. And she's like, what the fuck? The same sounds. Boo. Like somebody's opening doors or this and that, like saying, and then it gets louder. And she's like, okay, I can't fucking take this. So she literally, like, you know, by this point, big belly, all that stuff, she's like climbing out through the window. And then she just, in the middle of the night, she runs to the town. She's like, I can't sleep in that house, not anymore. So her husband comes back, the same story. He tells her, you're fucking crazy. You're imagining things. Baby, we bought this beautiful house. Don't worry. It's good. No, I don't want to be in this house. I'm never coming back. He's like, then trust me, there's nothing, you know. And he basically tells her, you know, I'm going to go. So she's like, well, you go by yourself. He goes there. Sure enough, nothing happens. So after the second day, third day, he begs her. Finally, she comes back and he's like, look, there's nothing happening. Right, and she's like, okay, but it's like, when she comes back, he tells her just like, I don't know, somebody, maybe an animal got in because there were things like, you know, moved around in the kitchen. She's like, okay, so he's like, probably an animal got in, and you know, and that's why you got all scared. Right. And anyway, so it goes on, and then. What's it called? Another time he has to travel for work, and she's like, "No fucking way, you're going." No thing, I'm not staying. And he's like, "Okay, whatever. Let's get somebody to stay with you." And they're like, nobody's staying. Finally, he calls his his father, right? And he's like, "Dad, can you stay? You know, with my wife? Just stay with her because she's scared. She says she's hearing things, all this stuff, and then right?" And the father's like, "Okay, yeah, I guess I can stay, right?" So they go there. And she's like, no, I don't feel, you know, your father's older. I don't feel things. So the father's like, okay, well, you know what? Let's call the priest. Let's have him come tonight. He's going to bless the house. You know, there's any ghosts, we'll just release them. And he's just not taking it seriously and all that stuff. And, you know, the priest comes and they're all like chit-chatting, you know, eating something, you know, little snacks, having a coffee or whatever, tea at night, whatever it was that people did back in the 1950s Poland. And then they're hanging out and this and that, and everything seems to be okay. And then, they start talking about like, so, well, what was it that you heard? Because, even the priest is like, I heard that everybody's saying this house is haunted, right? And she's like, oh my God, even you knew about this? Like, it's like, well, yeah, everybody knew about this. That's why nobody wanted to stay here, right? And he goes, it's probably just, how it is, people's imagination. And while they're talking, sure enough, they start hearing the sounds, bang, bang. And it just comes down the hallway, and she's all, everybody's like, what the hell? So then, they tell the priest, they're like, Father, just go in there and bless the thing. And the priest is like, sure, yeah, I'm gonna go, yeah, sure. And he starts taking a few steps, and they're all just hiding down the thing, the little room that they were down the hallway, and they're like, the sounds are coming from the kitchen, right? Just go, Father, just go there, just face the ghost, tell them to leave.
That's a job.
Yeah, and that's sure enough, like after like a few seconds, the priest is just jets it out the front door. He's like, and they're like, what the fuck? So she's like, okay, I'm out of here. And then finally the father is like, his father is like, okay, wait, okay, there's got to be a rational explanation for this, don't worry. So he grabs a big stick that he had, and he's like, well, why do you need a stick if it's irrational? He goes, don't worry, just in case, probably some animal got in there. And then he goes in, she's just freaking out, it gets louder and louder, and suddenly, the father's walking, and she just peeks over, he makes his way to the kitchen. By this point, she sees that the kitchen doors are shaking and banging, and he just opens the door and bursts in there with that stick, and then it's just, quiet. She doesn't hear him. She just hears the banging. And then suddenly he starts screaming, hey! And she's like, what? Oh my God. So she's about to run, and he goes, come here, I want to show you something. She's like, what are you talking about? He goes, come. He's like, no, I don't want to go in there. He's like, no, there's no ghost. Come, you got to see this. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? So she finally is like, doesn't want to think, but he comes out, grabs her. He's like, come, trust me, there's no ghosts, but I want to show you something. He takes her into the kitchen, and she says, literally, the paintings are crooked and things are falling off the shelves, and like the cabinets are still shaking. And this guy grabs he has this stick that he like grabs it, like these two branches of the stick, and the stick starts shaking. And he's like walking, and he goes, you got a spring, like a live well right under the freaking house. Some idiot built a house right on top of this. But the good news, you don't have to dig for a well. You're gonna have plenty of spring clear water or whatever in your house. It is, and then she's like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah. Every time the full moon comes around or something, every time of the month, what happens is that the water in the spring, I guess the pressure builds up, and that causes the whole thing to shake. And because the kitchen's built right on top of it, it shakes the walls, shakes the things, and it happens every month." And she's like, what? And then sure enough, the husband comes back, they tell him, and they literally end up like building like a well underneath the house so they can pump all this water. And they end up actually selling the water to a bottle company, and they make like millions of dollars or whatever it was that they made back in the day.
I see you going there.
Yeah, and everything ended well.
That was a good ending, yeah. Literally ended well.
Yeah. So again, was it true, or was it one of the bullshit stories of my grandpa? I don't know, but I'll tell you, I wouldn't be surprised if 99.9% of these ghost stories are just nothing more but just things that people make up in their mind, while in reality something physical is happening. You know what I mean? It's like the stairs settling in my house.